Okay, thanks for dance and the hosting Schaubühne Lindenfels for this opportunity. For Dance is supported by Deal plus Ritter Tanzpack Reconnect, which is funded by the Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and the Media as a part of the Neustart Kulturinitiative, and also by the Culture Department of the City of Leipzig. TanzDIALOG events in collaboration with other experts approach gaining an insight into the creative processes and working methods of dancers and choreographers. So here we are. Thank you all for sharing time together. And for the audience, there will be a chat possibility for questioning our two special guests. So welcome Lisanne Goodhue, a Canadian dance artist based in Berlin and Montpellier. She trained contemporary and classical dance as well, and that's important, visual art in Montreal. Rooted in a political and social approach, her choreographic path is a generator of scenographies and installation. So large format video, sculptural drawing, modular sculpture, photography, light, etc. Her choreographies imply a virtuoso somatic stranger's dance practice in close proximity with the public, and as bodies bring us to projects and experiences with strong ecological, socio-political, affective, and atmospheric consideration, we now shift to our second guest and welcome María Auxiliadora Gálvez Pérez. Live from Madrid, she is an accredited professor who has a PhD in architecture, developed by a research about choreography as an experimental laboratory for architecture in terms of space, atmosphere, and creative tools. She founds a platform of somatic architecture and landscape in 2016 and has been distinguished in national and international contests, won among others a landscape award, and was also part of the Architecture Biennale in Venice in 2002 and 2018. Nowadays, she is, among others, a teacher under training in the Feldenkrais method of somatic education. She works in landscape and architecture, mainly associated to an embodied point of view, and researches the possibilities of embodied cognition and movement in the pedagogy of the disciplines. Before going deeper into our topic, bodies as landscape, together with the two, we start with Lisanne's work, L'humeur vitrée. The definition says, I quote, the vitreous humor, also known simply as the vitreous, is a clear, colorless fluid that fills the space between the lens and the retina of your eye. 99% of it consists of water, and the rest is a mixture of collagen, protein, salts, and sugars. Despite the water to collagen ration, the vitreous has a firm jelly-like consistency. Investing a sense of vision or sight as a crossover between different medias, here dance and visual art, the eye becomes an active organ, catalyst for movement, sensing, and feeling. The eye is a kind of social interface between the performer and the audience members, a membrane where intern and external sensory stimuli meet. That brings us to the first visual examples on a research on how the eyes can be catalyst and foreground background grays. Now we see the split screen. Get you. Okay, and now Lisanne is going to talk about her work in leading to a practice later on. So please, Lisanne.
First, hi everybody at home that is watching. Thank you, Martina, for inviting me. Also, thank you for Fear for Tense to invite me also. And thanks to Oxy also to join us tonight. Yeah, so the footage you've just seen is actually an excerpt or rehearsal footage for my latest production that was called D'humeur vitrée. And I was very glad that you gave all this huge description of
I tried
vitreous
hard. Yeah.
body. So vitreous body is the English version of d'humeur vitrée, which is indeed a part of the anatomy of the
Mhm.
eyes. So first, this work really stemmed. First, I give a bit of context. So I've been a dancer for the last 10 years, working with different choreographers and in different countries in different projects. Um, and then in 2018, I started this master in choreography in Montpellier, the master called Exerce, and that I finished in 2020. So D'humeur vitrée was my final work for my study. What was super exciting about having time to study dance and what it had to do with choreography was that I really had the chance to grasp what my past as a dancer
Mhm.
would shape as a choreography. So I really took the time to invest what are the skills that I gained over the 10 years and what was my personal really my personal tools that I developed and trained as a dancer. And then I realized that those tools were really an independent material that I would perform in the same time that I would perform a choreographer's choreography. So in a way, I knew the dance movement, I knew the dance phrase, but dancer always have an inner monologue that they're telling themselves or cueing themselves. Like push in your right foot. Okay, the turn is coming up, so you have to balance on the left side. And so I really investigated what was my personal path or skills, and then I realized that I was really becoming very curious about how I use the gaze as a performer, as a dancer. So this was my inner score because I had to perform in a lot of choreographies where I had to interact with the public in close
Mhm.
proximity. And so this is where I started to really get engaged with how I use my eyes
Mhm.
to bridge this proximity and what kind of social interaction I could have with an audience member that later on would shift towards a more abstract dance. So I became really skilled and interested in investigating the gaze as a wonderful tool um, for performance. So um, for me, Dumas Vitré was really like a political statement as a dancer
Mhm.
to make visible and audible the skill that I
Mhm.
gain. And I think every dancer that has many years of experience have this inner monologue that they give themselves when they perform. And I wish those skills as dancer could be visible and heard. So this is when I started to say, okay, I'm gonna take this skill that I do anyway, and I'm gonna make the object, like I'm gonna make a choreography about it. I'm gonna
Mhm.
make a work that is about the experience that I gain over the last 10 years of being a dancer. So the eyes became a really important subject
Mhm.
in my research. And especially that my parcours, my pathway, academic studies is double. As you say, like I studied visual art and
Mhm.
dance. And I was really excited when I started to be interested in the eye because it's really this double motion. In visual art, of course, we use the eyes, we address vision, the sense
Mhm.
of vision. And in dance, I realized that the eyes could really be a catalyst for movement. And so I really was excited to find the eyes, because I did many projects before where I was involving sculpture or drawings, working with visual artists, but it always felt that this double path that I have was really split, remained split. So I was really trying to position my practice in between the two mediums, and working with the eyes was really became my obsession and my interest and my main subject for the last 2 years. So d'humeur vitrée is really the result of observing my practice for the last 10 years, and actually really designing small exercise of how I was using my practice. So small exercise, I call them scores. So in the end, d'humeur vitrée is made out of 8 scores that I created for the eyes. That is coming from my practice that I was already doing. Um, so, for example, the name of those scores are situating vision between moving fingers. There's also looking at someone in an off way. There's also tracing a line. So maybe I go a little bit deeper into describing. Oh, describing all of them a bit later. But I would also I would like to come back to the subject of the eyes um, in its double function, because I started to observe how I use my eyes in my everyday life, but also on stage. So I realized that, of course, like eyes are very social organs. They're the one that I use to address you at home, to watch Oxy when I talk to her. So this is really a very concrete and social way to use the eyes. And then this is a field that I kept in my pocket for like to integrate into my choreography, but like juxtaposed to this, I also use the eyes as a very abstract potential. So it's like the kind of gaze that I use when I'm dancing, where I stand my eyes in the back of my head, for example. Um, you know, when someone is really concentrated doing something, they have a very different kind of gaze that is not the social gaze. So I was really interested between the spectrum between those two poles. And basically, d'humeur vitrée plays with the range of those kind of two gazes that I could identify. Of course, I think there's more, but this is the pole. These are the poles that I played with. One, the very social gaze, I called it extreme association gaze. When I want to associate with someone, I watch them in the eyes. And the other one I call the like extreme dissociation gaze. This is the one that I use when I'm performing. And I think it does something really exciting to perform within the spectrum of those two gaze, because my engagement with the audience is maybe reaching you directly and then going to a remote place. And I'm very interested in the gap in between and what kind of imagination or sensation or state I can navigate in between. So equally, I would like to give the references that I use to develop the work d'humeur vitrée. And I was very touched by the tuning score of American choreographers Lisa Nelson, where she designed those tuning scores that are little exercises for the senses. And I had the chance to have workshop with her. She's this amazing woman of 70 years old and more. really busy with the senses. It's scores that, if I'm right, she started to develop in the 70s, and she carries on feeding today. So it's scores about touch, eyes, hearing, movement. So we did those really beautiful exercise of like running, eyes closed with a partner in the street of Montpellier. We did many different exercises. And so I was really inspired by the way that she shaped her practice into mini scores. So she was an inspiration for me to design those 8 scores. Another influence was the book by Jerome Peters, Through the Back, Situating Vision Between Moving Bodies. It's a wonderful book where Jerome Peters kind of interviews or have discussion with main choreographers of the contemporary dance scene. Meg Stewart, Benoit Lachambre is there, Jennifer Lacey is there. And it's addressing visual regimes of performances. So how audience are seeing and what other elements are into play. And in one of the chapter about Benoit Lachambre practice, there's, because Benoit Lachambre is also an inspiration for my work, as well as Dana Michel, from choreographers, both choreographers from Montreal. Benoit Lachambre with his like somatic practices and his idea of empty tubes in the body and the backspace. So those were 3 major influences to develop the work of Dumeur Vitré, which is a mix of somatic, dance technique, studies on gaze, and singing. Also, you'll see in the trailer later. Yeah. So maybe I tell you a little bit more about the scores that I've developed. Those are really micro exercises. For example, the first one is situating vision between moving fingers, and it's inspired by the book of Jerome Peters, Situating Vision Between Moving Bodies, where he addresses the space between the moving bodies, which I think is always a space that is very full and charged, like between our 2 bodies. There's a lot of things that are invisible, but through movement, I think we can make it visible. So situating vision between moving body is just simply this idea of looking at your hand, looking at your fingers, and then looking at the space in between your fingers. So you're really having this shifting gaze between your foreground and background. So this is the practice that we saw myself doing in the video. So it's really to treat the eyes as a camera. So it's really like foreground and background. And I think between the foreground and background, there's a lot of malleable space, or a kind of very a shift between the gaze of having a very concrete and very blurry gaze in a way. So I start normally with my hand, but then I shift to other body part. Like I'm looking at my arm and I'm looking at the space between my arm and my body. And I start to modulate and this shifting the volumes outside and inside my body by this little scores. So maybe that's a nice bridge towards Oxy's practice as architecture, shifting volumes, malleable volumes. Another one is I like to perform. This one is quite funny. Is looking at someone in an off way. So basically, if I'm addressing you, I'm talking to you. We're in a very social situation, and I'm looking at you in the eyes. But then eventually, I just shift my gaze. I continue talking to you, but I go towards your ear. So it's this very far away gaze. It's this very dissociation gaze that I practice. So this I do a lot with the audience. I play a lot with this, and it's always so confusing. Or is it confusing? I don't know. You'll have to ask the audience. But it's always yeah. It's always like it's a shift in our social interaction. So this is where I say the eyes is a really has a lot of potential in terms of social or abstract potential. Another one, a third one is tracing a line, where I try to merge my body in the field that it belongs to. So basically, I start from the furthest point that I can see, for example, outside the window, and I trace the contour of the tree. And then I practice what in visual art you call the shortcut. So I jumped to the next contour of things that I immediately see. So in this example is the window, and then I trace down the window, hit the radiator, go down the curtain, hit the chair, the table, the cable, and then the table, and I see the computer where Oxy is, and I come back to the cushions, follow the cable, come to my mic, and here is my body appearing. The contours of my body is appearing. And then I do the same thing, escaping the line in the further away. So in this score, I find it exciting because it's really my body is treated as an extension of the landscape or the architecture that it is right now. So it's kind of a way to merge my body in its environment.
Yeah, I was feeling like sculpturing your own body.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I felt when I saw it, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's really addressing the contour
Mhm.
of my body, but when you identify the contour, of course, you also identify the material, the
Mhm.
volumes that creates those contours. Um, um, and then, like, I would like to share with you the fourth score. I have 8 in total, but we won't go through it all.
No, please not. We have to
We
come
have
to
30 for
Oxy also. I
yes,
know you
of
you can
course.
talk forever,
Yes.
and that's very good. But
So
we have a
and
second part.
yes.
Yeah.
So I should I do it, or should we skip? How are we with time?
You,
Yeah. Yeah, we do it like
we do it.
2 minutes. Okay. So this last score, and I think we're
Yeah,
gonna finish on
yeah.
this
And then we
score.
see the trailer, and
Yeah.
then we
Okay.
come to
Superb.
Oxy.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Wonderful.
This last score we can do together at home. If you want to join me, it's very
Mhm.
simple. You can sit on the chair, and I will just read it through. And it talks. It's called spectral body, and it's
Mhm.
very simple. You don't have to be a dancer to do it.
Okay.
So it starts like this. I'm gonna read it through. Start from a relaxed body, sitting on a chair, open eyes, a soft gaze. As you remain still, start to imagine your left hand touching your head. As you remain still, start to precise how you will touch your head. What will be the position of your hand on your head? Will it be the palm of your hands towards the head or the ceiling? The side of your hand or a few finger touching? Will your finger be relaxed or straight? Where will you touch your head? Will it be the back or the top or the side? Once you identify where you're going to touch your head, move your hand towards the shape you imagined. Stay in the new position for a few seconds until you feel the weight of the present. Identify the next place you will put your hand in the near future. And become aware the present position you are in will now become the past as you leave it. Repeat the exercise of seeing the future, the present, and the past until you make a dance about it. So this little score is like, of course, can become a dance, but it's really about envisioning your body of the future and walking towards it and shaping your body into it. And as you leave your shape, this shape become a little like a ghost in the space, a trace that you leave in the space. So for me, it's a relationship between projection, present, and past, which of course is
comes later.
linked
Yeah.
towards the discussion
Okay.
we'll have
Yeah.
further on.
Okay.
So thank you for
That
listening
was
to me.
wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
maybe we see the trailer now, so it makes even more clear what you have to say or what you already said.
I'm looking through you. What did I see? I thought I knew you. What did I know? You look so different, but you have changed. I'm looking through you. You're not the same. You're not the same. You're not the same. You're not the same. You look so different, you look so different, you look so different, you don't look different. Okay.
Okay, space is a place where we create relationships. That is one quote of Auxiliadora, and that shifts us to her and her work and her development, which could be called maybe somatic architecture. And she is here to tell us a little bit about the multiple bodies, about the somatic space. So it's your turn, please, Auxiliadora.
Thank you, Martina. Thank you, Lisanne. And well, welcome also everybody who is listening. I will share my screen in order to show you something about this somatic architecture that I think you will see how it's really related to Lisanne's presentation already. So I will go now into the sharing of my screen. I think now you should be able to see my images. It's okay? Do you see them? Sorry. No, I think. Yeah. So I think it's very interesting what Lisanne already said in relation to how I see architecture Martina mentioned I was doing a PhD in dance and architecture. So I feel really, really engaged, and I feel dance is a beautiful tool for architecture in order to discover a lot of things that can make us to design in a different way. And I think in a very important moment that we are now, in which we have to change our way of designing, I think these tools are really, really interesting. So one of the questions I do in my practice is, what if bodies would exude environments? So it is not that I design a place and then bodies go inside, but how is if I do the other way around? So I think about how bodies are going to move, to perform, to behave in the spaces, and I can design for that. So somehow the design is coming like a radiation from bodies. I will show some images of different projects. The first ones are from my platform, the one I was having before, which I was sharing with another colleague, with Isabella Wieczorek. And the final drawings will be already from the platform of somatics for architecture and landscape. In all the work, there is this approach to architecture from directly gardens. The idea was to think in the movement of the kids. So really, really small kids of 1, 2 years old, they are the whole time touching the floor. And their gaze is the whole time like going into the floor, but also into the ceiling, because they are rolling and moving in the floor in a very different way that an adult does. And this question of the gaze that Lisanne was explaining are really pertinent, because we were thinking, okay, kids are going to be searching for colors and moving things in order to direct their gaze, and they're going to be rolling on the floor, so they will look into the ceiling. So what you see here is a kind of diagram of all the colorful shadows and the colorful patterns of the floor. So here you can see how these skylights would give color light that would be moving around the space, changing in different seasons. So this would be a kind of approach of how to give, on one hand, a cartography for kids to move, but also how architecture could really rise or emerge from the movement of the gaze of the kids, and also their rolling and their behavior in the space. In this other kindergarten happened similar. So we were designing architectural devices for kids to direct their gaze and to observe light entering in the architecture. So as you see, we would have small windows for the kids and bigger windows, or windows in other level for adults. But this idea that the kids would be able to play with their movements, with their gaze, with their spatial navigation, also through these courtyards, in order to create a kind of dialogue in between architecture and their bodies, it was really important for us in the designing. So somehow it's like the design would be exudated by the movement of the kids. The same happened in this other building that I was developing together with Luca Brunelli some years ago. It's an ice rink for skating. And here we were thinking, okay, what if the movement of the skaters would give the possibility of observing the nearby park, but through this colorful glass area. So also the lights would create in some seasons, and it's very important for me this, because the environment is a dynamic thing, together with the movement of the people, would give really the real architecture that we were looking for. And also this could be somehow irradiated from the building into the attend. So for me, it's really interesting, this idea that also I think is present in Lisanne's explanation about how bodies and environments co-constitute each other. So it's not that first appears one of them and then the other, but they co-constitute. And in order to work with somatics, with Feldenkrais method, and I started doing a kind of somatic ethnography. So I study of different bodies, how these different people would understand their own bodies through these immersive drawings, but also their space experiences. So in these drawings, people can go inside, they can have a common experience. And my idea at the back of this is to understand that we have similar perceptive apparatus, of course, because of our physiology and our biology, but also cultural inputs and subjective inputs are very, very important. So from these kind of studies that I do in different workshops with different people and different cultures, I developed this kind of knowledge about multiplicity of bodies and how I can design for them. So what happened when bodies and cities, and now we go into the urban environment, because also I think the piece we are going to discuss now is really related to this. What happened when bodies and cities co-constitute each other? So I want to explain you, to show you just a couple of images of some projects that are done in the city. The first one is related to abandoned areas, like waste grounds. And I'm interested in these abandoned areas because there we can feel the erasing of the limits about what a city is or what a body is. And we can understand much more our, let's say, connection, the connection of our body with other species, with other plants, with other non-human living beings, and how this start creating a kind of ecology of contact or sensual ecologies based on touch or really intimacy. And this blurring of the boundaries is really interesting for me in order to create a different way of developing an urban environment or a public space, but also in order to create new practices. In the first experience I will tell you, we were just going to these abandoned places in order to see the sunset. But we were interested, of course, in the gaze, where we were directing our gaze in order to see this event of the day, the sunset. But also, I was designing this kind of machine called Sunset Expander, which was hosting different events in order to enlarge the experience of the sunset. So in this case, the time is really important. So how we can make coexist different events in different places, geographies, like the sunset, which happen in different times in different countries, and how this can create coalescence, or I call coalescence the capability of bodies of merging together or performing together. So within this machine, everybody would feel at the same time this sense of a communal experience, this kind of coalescence, how these bodies and this environment immersed in the sunset could be like only one thing, a new place, not only the place where you are. So we were creating this device in which we could observe the real sunset, but at the same time, sunsets of different parts of the planet. So different times were merged together. Virtual and real sunsets were merged together, but everything was under a communal experience, in this case, through this architectural device. We were really interested on this in order to erase the limits in between what is really an architectural or a public space, is a geographical spot, is a place, or is a collection of relationships, which has to do with this quote that made Martina just some moments ago. So what happens if we go into the core of the city. Here you see the core of the city of Madrid, the Gran Via street at Christmas. It's really crowded. And we were developing also some years ago a project in order to create relationships in between different times, so historical times of this street, actual moments, and also future ones, projections, but also relationships in between different places. For example, hidden places of the city, like for example the undergrounds and the top, the roof of the buildings. We were making also possible to walk places that normally cannot be practiced, like for example the facades. So these big stairs were leading to this rooftop, normally hidden with this water tank that would create this reflection. And also in the underground, we could have some hidden places, like this kind of swimming pools, like a kind of hidden sea. As you see, all these are like artificial natures. We want to also erase the limit between nature and culture. So how all these environments interacting with different bodies can create a new place. And I would like just to explain this device, which is the cloud of mirrors. It's a cloud that was done on top of the street. And the interesting was that this device was able to use movement and trajectories of people and cars in order to build in the middle of the sky, for example, the reflections of the buildings, or erase the actual buildings, erasing them through the reflection of the sky. And this would be continually changing depending on your point of view. So it's somehow to include your subjective or somatic point of view into the projection of the city. So this cloud, I think, has to do somehow with this exercise that we have done with Lisanne about projecting a little bit the future, the kind of image of the city that will be created if I walk a little bit forward, and also having in mind the one I have just left behind. Well, the question that I also made myself is the question that is the title of this session. So what if we think of bodies as landscapes? So for this somatic ethnography that I use in order to do architecture, I do these drawings. They are big format drawings. And for example, I like for today, especially this one. This is the retina fabric, which is a kind of landscape, a kind of ornament for architecture. So I developed different of these drawings. For example, here I study the sensors of the skin in order to create sensors for architecture. Or here I study the body landscape, the structural body landscape, the structure of the fascia or the structure of the muscles, in order to somatically understand how these landscapes can be irradiated in order to create architecture. Also, our movement, our spatial navigation is changing the whole time according to these body images. And also all the perception of our living world somatically, if we understand it like a collection of different species that are also hosted in our bodies, also our design will change and won't be so anthropocentric. So all these drawings are the ones that are in the basis of the somatic architecture. I am going to show you some examples of this somatic architecture to finish. Here you see this kind of fragments of skins. I consider skins as something really deep. Skin and brain are created from the same embryo layer. So for me, skin is the outer, let's say, layer of our brain, and the other way around. So it's not something superficial, but something hosting all the knowledge, somatic knowledge of all the bodies that I've been working with. And I like to imagine this diagram full of these currents of political relationship in between bodies, gazes, emotional connections, political, social, ecological relationships, and how bodies can be made out of these kind of patchwork of different issues, different layers, and how they can be related to other bodies, non-human ones, like these fragile flowers, in order to exudate or irradiate the somatic architecture. Here we see how these components start creating constructive systems. I won't show them now, but you can imagine that are this kind of intertwining of living beings and also bodies in movement and architectural elements hosting them. So in this imbrication, I find this kind of image of the somatic architecture in between atmospheric events like water ones or living beings, or these sensorial sensors, or these devices that come from our skin. And I like to think that this somatic architecture can create a kind of melting in between past time, so ruins are present, but immediately new architecture conquer ruins, and bodies and architecture are so connected that they feed each other. So for me, it's this image of a somatic architecture which is present when environments, architecture, landscape, and bodies co-constitute together. In order to give just now the word again to Lisanne and to establish the dialogue, I would like to finish saying that for me, performativity and also estrangement, so when we change something in the perception, we give our attention to a different thing, are also tools for erasing limits, as she is doing with her choreographies. So I would like to just show you this nocturnal landscape that we were developing in Switzerland. And it was a garden, nocturnal garden, which at night was changing the conventional perception. So green leaves would be seen as red ones, and the flowers would bloom in phosphorescent colors. So we were thinking, this is really great in order to erase categories. So night and nocturnal gardens, like this in this project, would make like bodies merge with each other because categories are not so clear. So new ecologies would be created. Nothing would be artificial, nothing natural. Everything would be having a voice, and processes are performed with pleasure in these moments. So all these different organisms in between the digital and the real, I was imagining that would take the city in these pandemic times where humans would be at home. And maybe in our dreams, we could recognize this kind of reality, which is not a specific place, but is a multiple place created through the digital, the present moment, the future, and the coalescence in between multiple bodies. So I would like just to finish with this kind of tale in which we can learn a lot from these nocturnal gardens or from these platforms where present, past, future, and different bodies, gazes, and physiologies are coming together, as I think we are going to see in the piece of Lisanne. Thank you very much. I finish here. I think I have stopped sharing my screen. I don't see you now. Hi. I think I have lost you. I don't see you. I don't listen.
Oh, maybe. Ah, yeah, now here you are again. Thank
no.
you for coming back.
Thank you. I was feeling
Multiple
really alone.
bodies, you know, in landscape with technique. Okay. Should we shift? Maybe should we? Maybe we take this interruption as a good sign to shift already to the last point, like past, present, perfect. And this is not only site specific, but you were working in the city as well, and maybe you can say a bit about this interdisciplinary dialogue about
Yes.
sound, video, and whatsoever.
Yes,
And then we
absolutely.
can try to get the connection how you both were coming together. So something, oh, she has disappeared again. Hope she's coming back.
Should I start the introduction whilst we're trying to get Oxy back on track? So, as you say, past, present, perfect
Mhm.
is the next production I'm working in, and it involves also 3 other artists. So Ildikó, Tóth, and myself were doing the choreography and the performance. There's Maike Lindemann making the sound, and Matthias Gruner, a video artist that is working with us.
Mhm.
And also, well, it's a pity she's not online right now, but we started the conversation very early
Here she
on
is. Good.
with
Welcome
hi
back.
Oxy back. Yes.
Did you hear Lisanne starting to talk about her? Okay, maybe you just
Yeah.
say a little bit again. You
Yeah,
know,
I
for her
presented
too,
the
yeah.
team, and I was just at the point where I was introducing you as a also as a kind
Yeah.
of collaborators, because we started the discussion, Ildikó and I, with Oxy in January and February 2021, as we were
Okay.
all of us in the pandemic situation. And I mean, as we could all hear, Oxy had a lot of things to say and to offer towards our project, as we were working on Zoom a lot. Because I was
Mhm.
working with Ildikó, but Ildikó was in Leipzig,
Mhm.
and I was in Montpellier, south of
Montpellier.
France.
You in
And
Madrid or wherever?
also,
Yeah.
and Oxy was joining us sometimes on Zoom from Madrid. And then we also had another moment where I was in Montreal, Ildikó was in Leipzig, and Oxy still in Madrid. So through this performance, that the premiere will occur tonight, also online, and for an exquisite 4 audience member. So it's a mix between video, sound, dance, and movement. And it's the result really of the pandemic, I believe, because we started to exchange about the project via Zoom. And by Oxy joining us, we started to question Zoom as a place.
Mhm.
As you know, artists didn't had any didn't had a lot of options as a
Mhm.
outlet
Mhm.
to express or to manifest art than Zoom performance. So really, dance and other media had to shift towards digitalization. And Ildikó and I were really trying to understand what dance on screen has to do with the dance that I know in a physical way. So it was really also exciting to start the conversation with Oxy because, of course, like when I practice dance, I try to belong to my environment to, as you saw with the score that I performed with for Dumeur Vitré. But now I was practicing dance online or via screen. So we were trying to understand what movement had to do with screen. And so we were wondering via Zoom, Ildikó being in Leipzig, me in Montreal, Ox in Madrid, if Zoom was a place, if
A
Zoom was
landscape, maybe.
maybe a landscape or interconnection
Yeah.
between our 3 locations. And I think what Oxy was saying about blurring the borders between territories or borders between body and environment is really
Mhm.
happening via Zoom. So we were really, our artistic research was really to make Zoom a relevant place for art making.
Mhm.
So Oxy said this really beautiful thing about a place is a space where we create relationship.
Mhm.
And so in that saying, I really thought that it gave us the opportunity to imagine a place that it was not a physical place that I
Mhm.
knew of,
Mhm.
but could be like an alternative or a way that I could understand space in a very different way. And what touches me a lot in that phrase is really it talks about the relationship we establish together in order
Mhm.
to create a space. So this was really an exciting key moment in the creation, because I could work with the projection of Ildikó on my wall when I was in the basement in Montreal rehearsing. And as long as I was creating a relationship with her movement, um, I was creating a space, and
Mhm.
a space of reciprocity, actually. And this was really exciting to exchange with Oxy about that. So, and then we started to be interested in the what's the difference between a live performance
Mhm.
and a pre-recorded performance, or because everything started to be footage and videos. So of course we were wondering or being lost um, in terms of what's the difference between a live stream dance class and a video that I watch on YouTube, a tutorial dance
Mhm.
class or in a live class. So we were with Zoom, it really opened the questions of space, but also of the times, like times that we borrow, like
Mhm.
pre-recorded video is actually a little pocket of time that you take and then you displace and put it somewhere else. And so it's really a little portion of time that you take in. So how many spaces could we be in via Zoom,
Mhm.
but also how many times could we be in via Zoom or in performance? So that's a little bit what we're
Mhm.
observing in past, present, perfect. Um, and another exciting thing that Oxy said, maybe Oxy, you want to tell the story about the snowball that I was
Yeah.
very excited about.
Yes, because when we were having these conversations together, it was the moment in which Madrid was suffering this year a huge snowfall, but really huge with the storm Filomena. It's not common. So the whole city was full of snow, like 50 centimeters or 1 meter. It was really a lot. So suddenly the city was transformed into another place because all the categories that normally we read in the city, so the place to walk, the square, the street where the cars are, and so on, were erased. So people would take chairs and sit down in the middle of the highway, or people would be skating in I don't know, in the middle of the Gran Via street. And also some people were doing a battle of snowfalls in the middle of this really center, which normally is full of cars. So I was explaining them this in order to understand how this erasing of the limits would create different behaviors and different possibilities for a totally different space in the same place at the end. Yeah,
And different body feelings, I suppose, and
And
yeah,
different
different.
body feeling, yeah.
totally.
Absolutely. It was really the blurring of the border created like new
Mhm.
behaviors, and that we kind of took and then for example, like what it is to relate to Ildikó's projection of the past, but right now I'm in the present, or how do I relate to a footage that doesn't belong to my reality now, and what's this gap between our portions of time that we share? What is it that we share? You
Mhm.
know, and so it's this blurring the borders between spaces and time were really exciting. And it's also a little bit what I do in my dance practice, like blurring the borders of the body in order to
Mhm.
create new behavior or new ways to associate to each other by the
Yeah.
gaze, for example. um, Blurring the borders of a highway with a sidewalk creates new behavior. Blurring the border between present and past is this kind
Mhm.
of new dimension or new ecology of connection, I believe.
Or like single body parts, like using single body parts. Or yesterday I saw like something, I don't know the technique, whether it's a Maler, what is it, Klein Maler technique, where you have even more body parts and they are like a kinesthetic, or what is the word in English?
Kinesthetic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like experience.
Mm-hmm.
And even for me as a viewer, I was glued to watch like different body parts moving at
Mhm.
once,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
was thinking about myself, okay, that's a very big control and a technical skill, developed over time, I suppose, to make it happen. It may look easy, but it's not easy. That's how I understand it. So I was
Mhm.
fascinated, to see these tiny little different body parts moving, connecting or disconnecting or whatever. So,
Yeah, I believe like as much as we see details from the outside,
mhm.
there's as much detail inside our
Okay,
body.
so inside, outside, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so this is I think like it's because I'm able to describe what I see outside and the complexity of it that I also realize that inside my body is a full of micro places that are
Yeah.
mobile as well.
Mhm.
And this I always find interesting to measure my inside, my home, my body is my home basically, towards the outside, and
Mhm.
how the volumes inside the body can shift, outer volumes. Well,
Mhm.
that I come back to my dance practice, I escape a little bit the project, but
Mhm.
No, this was also very interesting, Lisanne. I think, isn't it, in the conversations to think in the micro, mm, macro landscapes.
Mhm.
And also it was present in these somatic approaches that we share, how something that you can understand really within in a micro scale can be irradiated or extended, erasing the borders and be transformed into a dance, a choreography, or having really environmental consequences.
Mhm.
I love that from our
yeah.
conversations also.
Hmm. And I think we're treating that a little bit in the past present perfect research also, how one portion of time is can be belong, there's an audio that belongs to one portion of time right now, like I'm talking and I'm seeing this
Mhm.
and I'm seeing the camera, and so there's a visual and audio that belongs to the situation of now. But what we're doing with past present perfect is that we're dislocating some element. So for example, now the audio would play, but 2 second or 5 second delay. So it wouldn't, so there's
Mhm.
a gap between what's the current reality now, the, let's say, the micro reality,
Mhm.
versus the macro, or the jet lag that we could create, or like create, like looking at one moment from a very far point of view, and how it can be distorted, or how to work with distance. And in
Mhm.
that distance, I always find there's a gap that allows for alternative bodies or
Mhm.
alternative thoughts
Mhm.
of being. It's not only the world as we know now, concrete. I see this, I hear that, I feel that. It's also the possibility that we can enhance by just delaying or pushing separating the layers that constitute a
Mhm.
moment.
It's I think it's multi-layered, and I was really glued to see the body talk, so to say, between Ildikó and you. Sometimes you were both doing you movements and then reacting again, and then there was a gap, and I was interested in how important is the audience. Okay, it's small now because of too small maybe, but how important is it, or is there improvisation in between because you react to the audience, or
Hmm. Hmm. Well, like this situation is quite special because it's like the first time that I perform since a good 6 months, I think, like in front of the
okay.
audience. But of course, like I like to think about live audience as part of this ecology that we're creating
Hmm.
in the performance. So I like to say that yes, I react to what I feel from the audience, and most of the time I position my choreographic practice in a room where I can see and sense the
Hmm.
audience,
Hmm.
where they're visible or they can be in the space. So therefore, like I position my movement towards what they're also
Hmm.
offer. reciprocal relationship. But now, what is very special about the past present perfect is that it's going to be live streamed, and this is a very unknown territories for live performance, at least myself. So it's kind of I'm starting to see what are the problematics that it opens in terms of like how do I engage with an audience online, like how do I do that? Do I use my gaze? Do I use close up? Do I use a foreground, a background, multiple cameras, multiple angles to in order to really enhance the movement that you can feel hopefully live, like what is it to transfer my media from a live context to a flat 2D surface for audiences online. So, and I think this is the question that every dancer, every choreographer, every artist has to ask themselves: like, how does my work stands on a 2D? For painting, for sculpture, for dance, for singing, for concert, for architecture as well. Um, and we're all trying to find options that are exciting for us. So this is why we wanted to make Zoom an exciting place, because this is one avenue we have to address right now. It's really relevant to address that, how it can be a sensitive and subtle outlet as well. So
Yes, it was very
it's a workshop.
interesting, to see first a live show. I was one of the happy people who could see both, the live show and then the video.
Mhm.
And it's different, but I've seen something in the video I haven't seen live
Yeah,
or couldn't see because you were outside and were pushing your
the phone,
cellar
the
phone
camera.
up
Yeah.
to the sky, and I didn't know
Mhm.
what's the okay, I know what's there, but I didn't know whether it's important or not.
Yeah.
But later on I saw the visual screen of it. But being with Charlie alone in this big room and sometimes even left alone was good for me, was physical, uh, was an inspiration, to be there, to see the two rooms, to watch you in the other room and coming back and performing. So this is totally different. So I
Mhm.
have I'm archaic, so I have an understanding how difficult it
Yeah.
is with live stream. But
Yeah. The idea was
it's the
really
way it goes, I suppose,
it's exactly as
Yeah.
you say. It's like it's really two different
Yeah.
experiences,
Yeah.
because what we tried is to really provide to create two different objects. One is the live performance, and one is the live stream. So in a lot of cases, I believe like performance that are happening live and online streamed, it's maybe one camera fixed, and it's a little bit like addressing the question of documentation, or like it's a
Mhm.
camera that is archiving your work. um, so we were trying to to understand the difference between, yeah, documenting your work
Mhm.
or and creating an object that could stand by itself on
Mhm.
the screen, and that could be exciting to watch. And of course, like, there are artists that are already doing that, and they're called filmmaker. And that's what they're like people that are in the film industry are addressing those questions of like body on screen since a lot of years. But it's just now that I think dancer have to address this question: how do I want my work to be received and shared on screen? So
Yes, I would like just to say that it's very exciting to to see the piece. I didn't see it yet, but I was thinking now in Hikata Tatsumi, the one creating the Buto dance. He used to have a performative space that he was calling 650 experiences, because there were 650 seats to look at the performance. So I think now you will have, I don't know how many hundred of viewers, but also in I don't know how many hundred of places. And this is really, really exciting. So It will be great.
Maybe what we have forgotten is showing the drawings. You, you know, like this would be very helpful, you know, for all the visual stuff which was included also, like the two
Yeah.
drawings. I don't know which is first, like the city and body, or vice versa. You decide,
Yeah.
and we have a look to this because this is another landscape, so to say.
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe we can show the drawing
Mhm.
of the city
yeah.
that is going to come in a few seconds. So it's a little bit like the extension of maybe Oxy, what is she is proposing. I have a drawing practice as well,
Mhm.
and that is busy with tracing borders, bodies, and like taking a
Mhm.
picture from the
Mhm.
city and then tracing the borders, the contours of the body with different techniques. And then eventually I erase some part and it becomes this very abstract shape. And in that very abstract shape, I think we can find a lot of potential for imagination. For example, if we flip the drawing on different side of the screen, for example. So those drawings we're also using in the performances. And I don't know if we can have the
Can we
drawing
see
or
it?
the series that I made, so it becomes a bit clearer. Could I have technical support here? So here, the Linden Nauer 1 and 2 and 3. Yeah. And so is are you projecting it now? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And audience is not hearing anything. Okay. So I think yeah, if you showed it, then we can.
You give us a sign.
Great. Thank you for showing the drawing. So that was just an expression or a manifestation of bodies in the city and how it can become an abstract material, and potentially also addressing those contours or those borders between bodies and architecture. So how this frontier border can disappear. Yes.
I don't see them. There is any way for me to see them? If not, don't worry. But I'm curious.
I'm afraid not.
No,
Not.
doesn't matter.
It's
You will
beyond
show
my.
them to me afterwards, Lisanne.
Yes, I will with pleasure. Yes.
Perfect.
Using the imagination.
The borders
Oh,
between imagination
Totally.
and
yeah.
the screen. Yeah.
I would like to know whether we have already some questions from the audience. No. Well, would be a wonderful possibility, but if not, it's okay. So maybe we are, I don't know how much you want to say, because we are close
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
an end, so
Yeah.
to say.
Absolutely.
I make a short close-up and then make the advertising, and then
Yeah.
we see the trailer.
Absolutely.
So, okay, the constantly searching for ways to challenging perception of dance within collaboration and heterogeneity stands for finding ways of coexisting in a performative space, and is also generating a, here's the word, kinesthetic experience between the performer and the viewer. And in PPP, also past, present, perfect, dance and sound mirror the urban everyday life in distortion, stagnation, and silence, video projecting, opening artificial fragmentation of time and space with the body, movement, and sense. So we sense, so to say, choreography as an experimental laboratory in terms of space, atmosphere, and creative tools. Okay, thank you, Lisanne.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Auxiliadora. Thank you for dance. Thank the audience and everybody who is involved in the inspiring experience and now the advertising. So the performance live stream is to be seen today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. So 10th, 11th, and 12th at 9 p.m. There is also a possibility for limited tickets for the shows, and further informations you can see on website Schaubühne Lindenfels. So enjoy one way or the other. And now we are finishing looking the trailer.